Once again, I'm Trudy, the founding teacher here, and I'm happy to see my beloved husband, Jack, is also here. Hi, Jack. We're not, Jack is up at his place in Northern California, and I'm here in LA, where I've been for the past month. I can't say I'm with all of you, but I'm actually with all of you as much as when I'm up there at Jack's house. We're with each other in a whole different way these days. And for those of you who may be new to InsightLA, a warmest welcome to you. Very happy that you're here. And just so you know, we do about a half an hour of meditation together, then we have some teaching and then some conversation. So we'll begin with meditation. And if you can find a comfortable sitting posture, just a posture where you can be relaxed and feel at ease, while at the same time that you're sitting up with a sense of a straight back, not in any kind of military straight, rigid kind of back, but straight in the sense of expressing the dignity and poise and balance of being a human being in this life, right here, right now. And this upright posture, if you can sit, also expresses a kind of self-reliance. And if you're lying down, if you have an issue with your back or whatever, and you're lying down, that posture, you can feel the support of the earth holding you up through the floor, through the cushions, wherever you're lying, and really connecting with that support of the aliveness of the earth, suffusing your body as you lie down. And then gently, either closing your eyes or lowering your gaze. And then moving the body back ever so slightly, maybe an inch. It's a kind of signal that we're sitting in receptive mode, receiving the moment. Not tipping forward toward the next moment, anticipating what's next, but gently sitting back, relaxing, fully receptive, open, listening. Listening to the sounds of life around you. And listening too to what's happening within. Just feeling the sensations of aliveness in the body. Hearing the various voices and thoughts just flowing through our consciousness. Aware of how it is to be life in the form of you, of me, of this moment. receiving the breath in the body, breathing in the aliveness and freshness of this morning or afternoon or wherever you are. And breathing out any tension, relaxing. Sensing how the in-breath is an enlivening, refreshing, energizing breath. The out breath is the calming, releasing, letting go breath. And bringing your mindful awareness, your attention to whatever helps you stay connected to this present moment, ever changing, ever present, always gently orienting to this sense of nowness, life happening right now. And just noticing as you sit, whatever is happening, whether it's pleasant or unpleasant, sad or happy, just noticing how it's possible to just be here, as though we're sitting on the banks of a stream, our own mind stream, heart stream, and just watching what flows by, and seeing if we can infuse that watching, that observing spirit with a little tenderness, just a feeling of gentleness or understanding. Oh, yes, this too. And when you find yourself all lost in thought, or if the body is feeling tense or knotted up, again, just shift the body back an inch to relax into just receiving the moment patiently, kindly, willingly, receiving all that is right now. Noticing the attitude of mind as you sit. Is there wanting something different to happen? Something more, something better? Just noticing in what spirit you're meditating right now. Noticing where your attention is inside or what's happening outside in other parts of your life. Just noticing the longing for good experiences and the painfulness or the difficulty of being present with painful ones. This is how it is. And as we sit up straight in the midst of experience, whatever it may be, we are strengthening the ability to be awake, alive, fully here, enjoying each moment of this life, the good, the bad, the easy, the hard, just sprinkling a little joy and gratitude on each one. So here we are in July 4th weekend. Um, very strange July 4th weekend with the beaches closed and gatherings, big gatherings for fireworks being banned and COVID rising. I went for a walk on the beach Thursday evening because I knew the beach would be closed for this whole weekend, and I love the ocean so much. And just, it was absolutely shocking to me how many people were not wearing masks and socially distancing. And clearly some people are together and living together, but when you see large groups of young people having a beer and everything on a blanket really close together, I don't think they all live together. And it was scary, actually. I don't know how, if we don't take care of each other. I take care of you by wearing a mask, and of myself too, of course, but I hope you will take care of me and wear a mask, because it's scary otherwise. So anyway, here we are, and I was listening to a podcast with Maria Shriver, and I forget the people's names, but one of them was an African-American man, I think Stephen Twitch was, and she was talking about how, in spite of all the problems of the country, she was so excited to be able to vote and to be free and to have freedoms that other people die for in their countries. And she asked Stephen, is there anything about our country that you can feel happy about on this July 4th? And after reflecting, he said, not really. You know, this is a time when people of color and their allies and are hyper aware of how this country was founded. And so it was just an interesting dialogue, hearing her appreciation and gratitude, but also there she was engaging in this dialogue and listening to people who really are angry and not feeling in a mood to celebrate right now. And so I was reflecting and wanted to just have some bit of, I don't know if it's even teaching, just sharing some reflections with you today that can spark a conversation together, because we at InsightLA are also going through some of the convulsions that all organizations are experiencing at this time. And having to look, we've been actually working for years on being a more diverse community, a more inclusive community, and looking at the ways that we have all, as white people, I'm speaking from my present location as a Jewish, white, cisgender, heterosexual woman, an elder, at age 75, an elder, that there are, well, for all of us, but when people talk about white supremacy nowadays, it's not talking about, the Ku Klux Klan or people marching in Charlottesville with their torches chanting Nazi slogans. It's really referring to the way that encoded in all of us through the culture that we absorb since we are born. And that's part of what humans do, is absorb the culture they're in so they can function within that culture. But there are also so many inequalities that are encoded kind of in the DNA of our culture, and we absorb those, and they are invisible to us. And I remember at the conference, the teachers' conference around the turn of the millennium at Spirit Rock, there was a big conference involving all the Buddhist traditions, the early Buddhist tradition that we are part of as an insight meditation group, the Mahayana traditions of Zen and Himalayan Buddhism, the mindfulness. So everybody was there, the people who taught, and the Dalai Lama was there blessing the entire proceedings. And Ralph Steele, I think he was a Marine, definitely a veteran, and a Black man stood up with a booklet that he had worked on with some other people called Making the Invisible Visible, Racism in Our Buddhist Communities. Now, that was literally 20 years ago that he stood up and began that conversation. And now, I think as a result, partly of the pandemics, but mostly of George Floyd's public execution, and then the stream of just terrifying and violent videos of killings that followed that, we're really in a moment of tremendous turmoil in our country. And I believe that, I hope that we can stay connected through this disconnection. And as I talked about on my birthday, you know, what's happening in the country is reflected in our organizations and also internally in us. I know that when the turmoil began at InsightLA, I felt bewildered and kind of mad, like, wait a minute, we're a loving organization. You know, how could we be harming people? But then realizing too that this is a time to listen, not to be reactive or bewildered, and appreciating that at InsightLA, we don't have a group of people who want to burn the whole thing down. You know, there are people who really love InsightLA and yet are also feeling unhappy with some of the ways that things are. And they are asking to be heard, and they are being heard. 2 full board meetings have been devoted to listening. And this is a good thing. This is a necessary thing. When I lived in Cambridge in my previous incarnation about 20 years ago, I had, you know, lots of course, friends and colleagues. I'd been there almost 30 years. And one of them was named Diana Eck. She's a professor at Harvard University who started something called the Pluralism Project. Oh my gosh, maybe at least probably 30 years ago. And she makes a distinction between diversity and pluralism that I really like. And it's very simple. I want to share it with you because I think it's at the heart of the matter right now of this listening and having some maybe difficult conversations with each other. She says, pluralism is not diversity alone, but the energetic engagement with diversity. Diversity can and has meant the creation, her pluralism project focuses, I didn't say that, on religion and religious diversity within religions. Diversity can and has meant the creation of religious silos with little traffic between or among them. And she said today, and this was written a while ago, diversity is a given, but pluralism is not a given. Pluralism is an achievement. And the meaning of this is that real diversity, we have to have encounters, we have to have conversations, we have to be in relationship with each other, we have to be in each other's lives. And because of all the reasons we know, and I've talked about many, many times over the years here, redlining and so forth, it's difficult. We live in segregated places for the most part. And anyway, mere diversity without encounter and relationship, she said, will simply yield increasing tensions in our society. And I think that's what we are seeing today. So pluralism is about actively seeking understanding across lines of difference. And I do feel like that's what we are engaged in here at InsightLA. And I hope that you can have the courage and feel brave enough to do that in your own life too. I know one thing that's happening to lots of people, and Robin DiAngelo wrote a wonderful book about it, is something called white fragility, where white people get so scared of making a mistake or saying the wrong thing or hurting somebody's feelings that they get afraid to say anything. But really, nobody's asking us to be perfect. And I have talked about this before, but it feels I'm reminding myself too, not just you. Nobody's asking us to be perfect. All we are asked to do is to listen and learn and be willing to modify our views And that's a huge part of our Dharma practice, to be open to the unknown, to be open to uncertainty, to be in what my first teacher called don't know mind, and to trust the wisdom that can emerge from that willingness to be with the unknown and not just be with what we already know. Because you don't come to your meditation practice because you just want the life you already know, right? You come because you want something new and something hopefully more expansive, and that will bring more joy and happiness into your life. And Thich Nhat Hanh, I want to speak a little bit about Thich Nhat Hanh because he is the example to me of somebody who has, sure, like all of us, flaws, but is somebody who really stands for deep, deep meditation practice and powerful social engagement and activism. And he is a Buddhist monk, a Vietnamese Buddhist monk that most of you have probably heard of. And he said something very interesting about Martin Luther King that I want to share with you. They were good friends. And he said, Dr. King tried to transmit his insight and his love to the community, to us, but maybe we have not received it enough. He said he wanted to transmit the very best of what he knew, the goodness of all of that. His love, his non-duality, but people got very focused on him as a person, both good or bad ways. And he said, he's no longer here. And so we have to be aware of the transmission that he was trying to give, this crucial transmission, which was not about authority or positions of power or transmission of power even. It was about transmission of Dharma. And what I mean when I'm speaking as Trudy, what I mean when I say Dharma is the transmission of love. Love for all beings, love for all life, love and respect and appreciation for just what this is that we have been born into here on this earth. So our mindfulness practice, our meditation practice, are developing greater stability and concentration and focus. Why do we want to do that? What's the point of getting more focused and concentrated? Really, what is it? Well, for me, it's so that I can listen from a place of openness and get past my ideas and assumptions and just listen without reactivity and with receptivity, that receptivity that we've been practicing as we sit, that willingness to just receive the moment and look and watch and observe what is here, and to do that with that spirit of the intention to understand and not to judge, to see and to understand, and to have some compassion for what we're hearing. And that means being able to really step into the shoes of the people who are speaking to us and make that imaginative effort to trade places and to try and see what would it be like to be in my 20s right now. How might I feel? Well, I can relate to a lot of it just from hippie days. You know, we had the Vietnam War, we had students being killed in protests, and we know about the Kent State white students that were killed, but there were Black kids killed before that too, students in university in the South. And we also wanted to dismantle the culture of individualism, and we cared about these things very deeply. And I was joking when I was meeting, I mean, it wasn't entirely a joke really, but at one of the board meetings, and I said, this is why old people have to step down, because young people have the passion to continue with these ideas, whereas we are more concerned with making sure that we make room for future generations It's a different developmental phase of life. But the culture of individualism is what I saw on the beach the other day. People feeling free to just do what they felt like doing without caring for the collective. And I felt like saying, okay, even if maybe you don't care, maybe you are interested in the eugenics of this virus that will cleanse us of old people and disabled, less abled folks, and people who have various kinds of compromises to their health and maybe need more support. And oh, good, the virus can just wipe us all out. But even if you don't subscribe to those kinds of terrifying political views, and you just have friends who are pregnant, or friends who have new babies, or friends who have a sick relative at home, anyway, you can see I was a little mildly traumatized by that walk on the beach. And yeah, thanks Akemi for putting that book up. But I also really appreciated in Thich Nhat Hanh's teaching what he went through during the Vietnam War. And because he, like InsightLA, was involved in deep meditation training at the monastery, but also seeing the suffering of the people in the war, he created something called the School of Youth for Social Service. In other words, he had a social service component to his deep meditation practice. And he said, so many of our villages were being bombed. Along with my monastic brothers and sisters, I had to decide what to do. Should we continue to practice in our monasteries? Or should we leave the meditation halls in order to help the people who were suffering under the bombs? After careful reflection, we decided to do both, to go out and help people, and to take our practice of mindfulness that we cultivate in the monastery through our deep, deep practice, to take it out. And we called it engaged Buddhism. This was many, many decades ago, but I still feel there's wisdom and power in this example for us today, when it's not a matter of bombs falling, but it's a matter of injustice, racial injustice that has been built into our country from the very beginning. So I'm just going to finish these remarks with Thich Nhat Hanh again speaking, and this was in the 90s at the time of the Rodney King, the police and the Rodney King episode and riots here in LA. I didn't live here back then, but we all over the world knew about it. And he wrote in an LA Times op-ed at that time, looking more deeply, I was able to see, and I have quoted this before, but not for a long time. Looking more deeply, I was able to see that the policemen who were beating Rodney King were also myself. And he is, of course, a man of color himself. Why were they doing that? Because our society is full of hatred and violence. Everything feels like a bomb ready to explode. And we are part of that bomb. We are co-responsible for that bomb. That is why I saw myself also as the policeman beating that driver. We are all these policemen. He has that deep, he's a deep dude. He has that profound view of interdependence and understanding of non-separation. And his non-dualism, his love echoes that of Dr. King. I can see why they were such good friends. And even though these are elders, they are my, well, not exactly contemporaries, about 15 years older, but more mine than yours if you're young. They are definitely elders in this tradition of deep, deep spiritual love and work for social justice. And this is what I hope that we can all stand for in our individual lives and certainly at InsightLA. So this is what I wanted to share with you this morning. And now would be happy to open up for some dialogue and conversation together. If you want to speak, just go into the participants and there's a raise hand function if you're not a co-host like me, and either click the raise hand or just wave your hand. And Kenny is going to be our moderator this morning, along with Akemi, who is our volunteer coordinator. Hi, Akemi, and thank you. Hi, Kenny, and thank you. You could wave so everybody can see you and who you are. Thank you. Yeah, and then they will unmute you and we can talk together. One thing we haven't done in this group is have breakout groups where you can talk to each other. And if you would like that, maybe just say something in the chat. Laura has her hand up. And maybe just say something about that in the chat. If you would like to have some chance to be in a smaller group of maybe 4 or 5 people, maybe 3 or 4 people, and have some chance to engage with each other, yeah, just say so. So Kenny, can you unmute Laura?
Yeah.
Hi, Trudy.
Yes. She's unmuted.
Hi.
Hi.
Hey, I don't usually like to raise my hand, but I'm just so moved today, and I want to thank you. You are my self-care when I can get here on Sundays. Our son just had a spinal fusion surgery on Wednesday, so we're finally home from the hospital late Friday night, and we're just sleep deprived, and but we're very happy. It went very well. We had a top surgeon. And we are blessed because we, have good insurance we pay for, but there are so many without.
No.
And I just had so many emotions listening to you this morning. We were very careful before his surgery to not, to not go outside. I'm blessed to work from home, but my husband just yesterday came running in to our bedroom to slam the window shut because someone walked by and spit who didn't have a mask, and it freaked him out. Like it would come through our window and infect our son. So, I relate to that terror and that fear. But I get so much out of being here. And you do remind me that I have to practice some self-compassion, especially during these tough times. I am paying attention to the outer world too. And whew, it's heavy. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Laura. Thank you. I got scared at the beach because I tried to walk around somebody and then they came really close to me, behind me, and I just realized I tend to be not somebody who thinks too much about my vulnerability, to be honest. It's not my favorite topic. And so I just go out, and Jack knows that, and he reins me in, but it was scary. So yeah, thank you. So I see a bunch of raised hands, Kenny.
Yeah, I'm trying to unmute. Tracy, can you?
Hello?
Hi. Hi. Are you unmuted?
I think it works better when I unmute myself. Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Okay, great. Thank you. Yeah, I was hearing what you were saying, and I think I feel the same way a lot. I live in Santa Barbara, and everybody kind of treats this like a COVID vacation zone, like it doesn't exist here, But I was reading this article yesterday about young people and how, their real fear more than COVID is depression and suicide. And that suicide is actually like the second cause of death for people under, I think it's 30. And so they're feeling like, they need to, they're like willing to risk the exposure to fight depression. And, I'm not sure what the right answer there is, but I've definitely noticed in my own life like with my children, you know, like seeing my younger children seeing some more like depression and anxiety arising because of this lack of community. And I guess I've been trying to have faith in that, like keeping them safe, you know, we'll eventually get through this. But at some point, I've just been wondering, like, what is the right view here, you know, like with mental health and COVID, and especially with, like, you know, the teachings of, like, I was doing the refuges yesterday and taking refuge in the Sangha, and like that's so important, you know.
So
And yeah, how do we balance that? And just as a, you know, as a teacher, how do you advise kind of like balancing your own self-care with also, you know, not predicting what is the best kind of self-care for others, I guess. I'm having a hard time as a parent knowing how to handle it.
yeah, and I think, you know, obviously every family has to find their own way. Some families are quarantining for 2 weeks with another family so they can be together and actually hang out together. Some people, my granddaughter and 5 of her friends, I think, got tested, and they're hanging out together, but they're being careful about who else they see, so that at least they have each other and they can be together. And then when they're together, they try to be, you know, mostly outside. I don't think they're social distancing particularly. They don't seem to be doing what they used to do, lying all over each other and stuff. But, you know, I think that, yeah, it's really difficult with the kids and with depression. But I know that, like, kids who are looking forward to being able to go to school, you know, I want everybody to care about kids being able to be with each other and going back to school. So I think whatever efforts we can make besides yelling at people who aren't wearing masks or something like that isn't going to help ever. Whatever kind of efforts that you can make to help people understand that we are actually, this is part of our refuge in Sangha, is to care for each other collectively, and to think about the children who need to go back to school, to think about the parents who need their children to go back to school. But that's when you're young, you don't think about parents. But just for each other, to think about kids being able to go back, and when can you be with your friends again? This has to do, it's really hard at that age. You know, the cerebral, the prefrontal cortex hasn't developed enough for that kind of delayed gratification to be an inspiration. So I just cheer you on for finding creative ways that you can keep your kids safe, finding other parents who are willing to be semi-quarantined enough that they could have, maybe, I don't know how old they are, play dates or get together. Yeah, this is really a tough time in so many different ways. Thank you. Yeah.
I have Gabby next. I'm having trouble unmuting here for some reason.
Can people unmute themselves or not?
Yeah, Gabby, you're open.
Okay. Hi, Trudy. Good morning.
Good morning.
Well, I like your the practice today, and when you said to be by the riverbank and watch the river, I'm pretty good at visualizing myself and being there. And all of a sudden, my river went like red because I had a lot of anger, and more so because I felt like I couldn't make amends or make a way for me to not so much control it, but I was still in the beginning of this coronavirus. I was staying with my ex, and you know we were okay, but it got to a point where like it's enough. I had to move out. So I finally did last night. But the situation was not pleasant, and we tried to be friends and we tried to be well for each other and so forth, but it ended up being not healthy for me to stay there any longer. But I was kind of pissed at myself for being reactive at some point. you know, how dare you offend me? How dare offend you? How dare you offend my race and my profession, my career? I mean, I think I had the right to be angry, first of all. And I was like, what happened to him? Like, he was not like that. He's a white man, first of all. I was like, he was not like this when I first started quarantine. And, you know, he listens to the news more than I do and all this stuff, and he rages. And I'm like, okay, you know, you don't have to listen to the news, you know, we would take walks and stuff, but I could see the difference from before and after. And it didn't get any like better. And I was like, oh, that's horrific. I think I need to move out. So I moved out.
So what is your question, Gabby?
My question has to do more with like, how come I couldn't I
Okay.
couldn't control that rage, right? I
How come
couldn't
you
control
couldn't
that anger,
How come
right?
you can't be a saint, right?
I couldn't. I said, just be quiet, walk away. And I was just so reactive. I was like, how dare you?
Has anybody else ever felt reactive and angry in this group? Yeah, look at gallery view and look at all the raised hands, Gabby.
Yeah.
We need to forgive ourselves because the pandemic is, for most people, it is not good for their mental health. And that includes your former husband. You know, for most people, being cooped up and not having their usual outlets for their energy is just not healthy. And I say most people because some people who are introverts, and for me who has an introverted side, I actually don't mind one single bit, but I'm also not single, and I'm not, you know, looking for a partner, and I don't have a biological clock ticking, and I'm not a teenager in full bloom, and I'm not a little kid who needs their play dates, you know, all those things. But it's not very healthy. And so if you lost your temper and blew your stack, and the river was just running red hot.
It was red.
Yeah, red hot. That's a moment of truth also. Anger is truth. It's the truth of the moment. And that's the key part. It's a moment. It's a mind state. You are learning from your meditation that they arise and they pass away, and that it's not about you in that sense. They just come unbidden. You didn't decide to be full of reactivity and have that red hot river running through your psyche. It just happened, and it does happen. So being able to watch and hold it with some self-forgiveness and self-compassion is really what the practice is asking all of us to do. We're being asked to have compassion for our suffering and the suffering of others, and then to develop some detachment and dispassion from that suffering so we can bear it. And if you look at what we call the Brahma Viharas, the divine abodes, the beautiful places the heart can dwell in love and compassion and joy and equanimity, when you really look at those, you see how they support each other. Because we've practiced love and compassion and appreciating the joyful moments of life, we can develop some equanimity and ability to stay in balance and observe what's happening without flying into reactivity. But that isn't going to happen all the time because we have, you know, deeply rooted habits of feeling and thinking, and we're just getting to know and work with them as we sit. So for you, I want to just really encourage you to have some kindness and forgiveness for yourself. We have classes in mindful self-compassion because it's so important to develop this. It helps with everything. Not because you just give yourself a free pass to act out in any way you feel like. No, you're practicing, you're meditating, you're working on yourself, but just so that you can accept the humanity, the humanness of who you are, and that none of us is perfect. Even these teachers we revere that I was quoting today, like Thich Nhat Hanh or Martin Luther King, they were not perfect. They were human beings. And the Buddha was not, well, the Buddha seemed pretty perfect, but the Buddha didn't start out that way. It was just a human being who perfected his own being through very dedicated and sustained and intensive effort to do that. But this practice brings joy. And so if you stay with it, that red, you know this already or you wouldn't be here, that red hot river turns to whatever color you imagine joy has. What color do you think joy is for you?
Well, I ended up turning the river into all the chakra colors. So I was watching it flow and
Yeah,
it was nice.
a rainbow river.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
So I have Maxine next, followed by Clark, followed by Deborah. So you could each unmute yourself at the same time.
It's funny that he's.
And see if you can make your questions pretty laser focused, because otherwise we just won't have time for everybody.
Sure. Trudy, thank you so much, as always, for a very important discussion. But it triggered in me this, that in one, and I'm completely with you and relate to everything you said, from the compassion for wanting diversity and the understanding. Grew up on the south side of Chicago, I got it. And even when the looting was happening, how I knew what that meant, that, and Martin Luther King was the one who said, they're looting because as easily as white people can go in and just buy something, they wanted just to go and
What
blow
is
up
your
something.
question, Maxine?
Thank you. Where is my compassion for the people who won't wear masks? I walk around and with my mask on, and it's supposed to be a relaxing walk, and I am enraged sometimes. And my self-righteousness comes in. And what my point being is that where can I get the understanding, that deeper understanding and possibly love for those people, and not my rage. And
Well,
I catch it.
the idea of loving them makes you want to tear your hair out. I loved that gesture of tearing your hair. Yeah.
That's the dichotomy, though.
The same question that we can have. I mean, I had some of those same feelings. I didn't listen to Trump's 4th of July speech, but I heard about it, and a friend sent me a video, which is really important for everybody to see, called A Night at the Garden. And it's about a gathering that happened in 1939 in Madison Square Garden. There were 20,000 people there celebrating the rise of Nazism. This is in Madison Square Garden. All of them with their arms out, with the Nazi salute of Heil Hitler, and a Jewish man. Actually, the hard part is that a Jewish man gets beaten up. But it's only 7 minutes. And if you can find it, Akemi, A Night at the Garden, I think it's PBS, and post that, because the rage at people not wearing masks is the same rage that I sometimes feel for people who are unabashedly racist, or who enact, violence on other people. Who, it's on YouTube. Okay, thanks, Juliet. And the not wearing mask is sort of, to me, the tip of the iceberg of, that's maybe just a careless kind of misunderstanding of what freedom really means. Our whole country has a misunderstanding of what freedom means. It's based on misunderstanding that freedom just doesn't, it's not just freedom to scratch your itch. That's not really freedom. Being in bondage to just how I want it to be, regardless of how other people need to be, is not freedom, not real freedom. So I feel like what you're talking about is based on a huge misunderstanding. In the Buddhist tradition, it's called ignorance, ignoring reality, ignoring the reality of interdependence and interconnectedness and non-dualism. And yeah, it's upsetting. It's upsetting. And, you go to anger, I go to fear. I get scared on my walk. But that's probably because I'm older than you are. But it's also true that you know, you are a longtime practitioner. You know how to work with your feelings, and you know how to calm down. And I don't know what to do about the misunderstanding that is so rampant in our nation right now. Other countries are doing better.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, hi Trudy. I think I was next, and my question is very similar to the questions, but it's mostly a thank you. I believe, first of all, that the way that you bring us together here on a Sunday, the Independence Weekend, the way that you, for years and years and years, given of yourself to form this community, I'm just very grateful, and I think we all are. So that was my first most important comment, because I think your talk today, just reminding us of who our wise, the wisdom of our ancestors and of you and Martin Luther King, that's just very, very helpful to me. I walk in Hancock Park, and I walk down the middle of the street because I feel like walking in the street safer than walking on the sidewalk when 80% of people don't wear a mask. And I think I've kind of come to the understanding, and I wanted to check this with you, thinking there's nothing I can do to change their behavior. If I want to walk and be safe, I need to walk down the middle of the street. So just accept that reality, watch out for cars, and enjoy time outside. And I think that's how I've resolved it. Just checking to see if that's the healthiest way to resolve it. I'm very careful, but in the context of your talk and the fact that you shared your fear, because I'm over 65 as well, that to me was, in psychology, we call that twinship. And I want to thank you for that, because you gave me sort of stronghold so that I can feel okay with whatever feelings I have about that, and that there's a deeper wisdom that we're all trying to live by, and there's nothing we can do to change people's behavior, but be kind to them and compassionate and just do what we think is, our own integrity. So thank you. And I'd like just your comment. Is that a way to resolve that issue, just walking down the middle of the street and accepting that if I want to walk and feel safe from the virus, that I'm going to have to adjust my behavior?
I think we have to, I'm always a fan of both and. I really love both and. So I would say, yes, clearly adjust your behavior because we want you to stay healthy and safe. But also, if the opportunity arises to have like a little conversation with somebody who's not wearing a mask from a safe distance, to do that. I think I shared that I had done that with a group of teenagers that were blocking my path. They looked like teenagers. I'm so old, they were maybe in their 20s. But I said, hey, you're not wearing masks. I can't get past you. And I didn't say it angrily. I was just like, hey. And one of them apologized as they made room for me. And I think if we can, sometimes engage with people, it can be risky. You have to pick your people. But it comes back to pluralism again. We need to have connection with each other and conversation with each other, and not just step huge, metaphorically step around each other. I like physically distant rather than socially distant, because we need to not be socially distant, but we do need to be physically distant for the kids to be able to go back to school and for this to stop in the time that we don't have a vaccine. Thank you.
Thank you.
Clark is up.
Oh, thanks, Kimmy. Hi, Trudy. Thank you for today. It's been great.
Thank you.
I was touched by the white fragility discussion, and thinking about some things that happened that also relate to your distinction between diversity and pluralism. I think there are a lot of majority white organizations like the Insight Board that are having consensus meetings right now, trying to understand where we are and what it means to be a white majority organization and how this is happening. And my high school, of all things, that was a boarding school where we lived with each other, had a town hall a couple days ago to discuss racism at the school. And afterwards online, there was another alumni that wrote in and said, So what happened with this? And really, I'm surprised we're having this discussion at our school because it was more diverse than most schools are. And I certainly never saw any systematic racism at all. And I was just really struck, having gone to the same school, and realized there was nothing overt, but our culture, washes all of us. And I think it touches on white fragility, this notion that, are you trying to label my school and me as an overt racist? And to me, it touches on that distinction that's on the wall of the clubhouse in Santa Monica that says, understand the difference between intent and impact.
That's right.
And I think for white fragility, we think, well, if I didn't intend this, I don't hold ill will that I'm aware of, then I'm clean, I'm good. There can't be any impact if I don't intend it to be racist. And I think with white fragility, it's just getting to the sense that we're involved in a deeply programmed culture that carries it everywhere. And it's way beyond having an individual racist thought, that systematic is what we live in every day. And I think white people are realizing that, and I'm certainly realizing it for the first time.
Yeah, thank you, Clark. And I'm actually proud of the fact that we're having this turmoil at InsightLA, because it's happening because we have diversity on our board and on our office team, and as much as possible with our teachers, that needs to be more, but we're on track with preparing people for future leadership positions. So do you know what I'm saying? I'm actually, today, I feel really different from the way I felt, I don't know, a couple weeks ago or 10 days ago, or whenever everything kind of, came to the surface. And I'm really feeling grateful. So thank you. Because I have blind spots. I know. We all do.
Emily is up next.
Okay. And I just want to say something about what I'm seeing in the chat about needing to wear a mask when you're outdoors. I may be mistaken, but I thought that the governor and the mayor asked us to wear masks when we're outdoors. And since I benefit from, operating in LA and in California, living here, I just tend to want to follow what is being asked of me by leaders that I may not always agree with, but do respect. So just to say that. Hi, Emily. Is it Emily? Who's here?
Me.
Yeah, hi.
Yes. I'm like trying to understand the current social situation from a Buddhist perspective, and my understanding right now, although I might be wrong, now I'm asking the question, is that things like racism, and also morality and justice are mental constructs within the Buddhist tradition. So, but does that not leave us
Okay, I understand.
without the tools that we need to build society?
Yes, I totally understand where you're coming from. And it's a big question in the Buddhist community too, because the non-dual teachings, the teachings of how really we're not separate, really we are all the same, teachings that when you practice meditation for a while, you actually taste in your own experience. You do taste the non-self element of our lives, and you begin to realize it more and more and more. But those teachings have traditionally been used. I remember this as a female in a very patriarchal beginning, where we had, our Asian teachers were very patriarchal in their cultures, and that teaching of no male, no female, that would be used to tell us that our feminism didn't matter and our wish that it didn't matter. So yes, yes, in the deepest way, every view that we hold is a mental construct. And why the Buddha talked about holding a wise view, he meant that, understand the emptiness, the essential emptiness of all of our opinions and views and how they change and they're not really who we are. That's what he was talking about. But because that has been traditionally used to silence people who have real concerns, we have to also, I think, include the emotional and psychological work. And that's something that the West has brought to Buddhist practice. And that emotional and psychological work is what allows people to be able to be in a more relational, conversation and connection with each other as individuals, if that makes sense. Is that helpful? Okay, so we're coming to the end of our time together. And thank you for the information that is being shared on the chat. I encourage everybody to look at the chat and read it. And I think that it's true that the fact that because there was a shortage, because our country was so lame in being prepared for this, which we may say nobody saw it coming, but all the epidemiologists saw it coming. It was just a matter of when, not if, a pandemic would hit. And because there was a shortage of PPE, of personal protective equipment and of masks, people were told that they shouldn't wear masks, that they weren't really that helpful. And that is very unfortunate because they do now acknowledge, even Republican governors are acknowledging they help. So thanks, just take a look if you are skeptical or don't understand or are confused, take a look at the chat thread. People are offering some good information. Thank you, everybody. And thank you for coming to practice today. Let's just sit for 30 seconds. So at the end of a period of study and practice together, we study ourselves so that we can understand how the mind works and what's actually in our hearts. And the deeper our understanding of ourselves, the deeper our understanding of each other. And the safer it becomes to connect with each other in friendship, in community, in Sangha, in respect. So we offer the goodness, our gratitude for the teachings and the practice that we share. Freely from our hearts, we make this imaginative offering of the goodness of our practice to all beings everywhere, without exception. May we and all beings grow in compassion, understanding, and care for the collective, care for each other. Thank you, everybody. Enjoy the rest of your holiday weekend. And I will see you next week. Thank you so much for coming and being together in this way. We're so fortunate and blessed to have each other and to have this, this way of understanding our life and connecting. So goodbye and thank you.
Bye.
Everybody, please, Kenny.
Thanks, Trudy.
Did you unmute everybody?
Bye, Trudy.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, everybody. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Trudy.
Thank you very much.
Thank Trudy.
You
Always good.
Come
take care of
Thursday.
each other.
Come here.
From Belgium to LA, take care of each other.
Thank you, Trudy.
Okay,
Bye.
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 Come Thursday.